delicious. Hey everyone, it's Tom Spellman here with Dave Wilson Nursery. Today is May 2nd. It's a beautiful morning here in the San Joaquin Valley. It's only about 65 degrees right now, but today is going to be an interesting day. It's the first day of the season that we're going to hit 90 degrees, maybe 92 or 93. So I wanted to do a quick walkthrough on the mini orchard this morning and consider some of the things that happen this time of year, some of the things we should be looking for, some of the things we should be taking into consideration as far as irrigation and mulching and fertilization. So first of all, that 90-degree temperature, that's always a stress issue the first time we get up into the 90s. So you want to make sure this time of year, before that weather stress element hits, that you're putting on a good, thorough, deep irrigation. 5 or 10 minutes for fruit trees doesn't mean anything. So you want to make sure that when you put it on thoroughly and deeply and saturate that whole area. So good, long, slow irrigations, as long as you have no runoff. If you have runoff, you've got to correct that. You've got to either adjust your heads or change your berms or do something so that you're not wasting any water. That's the last thing we want to do. Even with a good rain year this year, we don't want to waste water. So now's the time to consider those first good, deep, thorough irrigations. Along with that, how's your mulch layer? How's your fertility? Have you been doing things along those lines yet to compensate for that? Now is when trees are starting to grow vigorously, they're starting to ripen or starting to produce a lot of fruit. The fruit's getting larger, and we want to make sure that the nutrients are well supplied. So most importantly, for fruit trees that you want to produce fruit, you want to produce flowers. So if you're feeding with too high nitrogen fertilizer, you're going to have a lot of vigorous growth. You're not going to have much of a flower set, and your flowers will be weak. So you may not get any fruit set at all. All those flowers may drop off. Feeding with a good low nitrogen, high phosphorus, high potassium fertilizer, preferably something that's a humic acid base with a little bit of trace elements, that's going to make all the difference in the world. Feeding that tree right, it's just like you eating the right food. It's going to keep you healthy. It's going to keep you in a situation where you have energy and we want to do things. Well, the tree needs to do things. The tree needs to bloom. The tree needs to ripen that fruit. And if you're not feeding it well, or you're feeding it the wrong product, nitrogen in general, you don't want a lot. That's going to make sure that the tree is going to produce its fruit well and do a good job for you as long as you're feeding properly. Another thing we always want to take into consideration during this time of year, mid-spring, late spring, early summer, how's your mulch layer? When's the last time you replenished it? Well, we still have a fairly decent mulch layer here. I've still got a couple of inches of nice mulch. It's breaking down, but it's probably time to do it again. So I want to make sure that I've got 4 inches or maybe even 6 inches of mulch layer on here. And I love this nice, big, chunky mulch. I like the big pieces. I don't like little tiny mulch that's going to blow away in the wind or that's going to break down too soon. So this green waste recycle works out really well for us. The chunkier, the bigger, the better. It lies at different angles. It breathes really well. It takes the water down and saturates really well. So if you haven't replenished your mulch layer in a while, now's the time to do that. Thinning is another really important chore this time of year. You don't want the tree to be overburdened with too much fruit. You'll end up with a lot of small fruit, and you'll end up with tree branches breaking on the tree. We've already been doing a fair amount of thinning out here. If you can see that by looking down, over the last few days we've thinned hundreds and hundreds of fruit out of this orchard, and we probably still need to do it again. Thinning is always one of those things that I don't think you'll ever accomplish the first go around. So I like to thin a couple of times, maybe even 3 times through the season. You want to make sure that you're hitting early varieties early. As soon as you get that fruit set, as soon as it's the size of a green pea or a dime, that's when you want to come in and do your first initial thinning. So this is a variety that's producing a little bit later. The fruit has time to get larger, so we can come in and do some thinning a little later on this. And although we've done it once already, I'm probably still going to come through here and look for these clusters and thin down some of that small fruit. We want to make sure that we don't have too much too close together. We want to make sure that it's fairly well spaced out, so I can always take out some more. Look for fruit that has a little bit of damage. That's the fruit you want to thin. If it's a nice piece of perfect fruit, that's the one you want to leave. So thinning is important. The earlier you do it, the better. You'll never accomplish it 100% the first time around. Don't be afraid to go back and do it 2 or 3 times. Be on the lookout for post-season peach leaf curl. after the trees break dormancy, even though you've put on a copper spray or 2 or 3, if the inoculum for peach leaf curl is prevalent and the nighttime temperatures are humid, mild and humid, you can still pick up peach leaf curl. So here's a great example. We sprayed early, so our first flush of growth came out nice and clean. Then we had the perfect nighttime temperatures and humidity, so the peach leaf curl came back. Now our nighttime temperatures are changing again, and the new foliage is coming out clean. As the humidity goes down, the temp goes up a little bit, peach leaf curl can go away on its own. If I'm going to put on an application for control of peach leaf curl this time of year, I'm going to use a kelp extract spray, which is an OMRI registered organic, and really what it is, it's not a control of the issue, it's a foliar fertilizer. So what it's going to do, it's going to allow the tree to outgrow the issue. Typically this old infected foliage will drop off and the new growth will come out nice and clean. You also want to be on the lookout this time of year for any insect issues. Now's the time of year when aphid, mealybug, scale, things like that will start to expand pretty dramatically. They'll start to reproduce as the nighttime temperatures warm up a little bit, and they'll start to really infest the system of your plants and trees. So the quickest way to be on the lookout for most of those insects is look down toward the base of the trunk of the tree. If you have ant activity going up and down the trunk of the tree, those ants aren't going up for the view. They're going up because there are other insects living in the scaffold of that tree that they're harvesting secretions from. So they'll farm aphid and scale and mealybugs and actually harvest the honeydew secretions from those pests. So if you've got ant activity in your tree, you absolutely have something else that the ants are going up to check out. You want to pay attention to that. This time of year, those insects are very easy to control. The first thing I do, hose, high pressure nozzle, clean the tree. Get as much removed physically as you possibly can. And then if you want to come back with a light oil spray, or if you choose to put a chemical spray on, you can do that. But you want the tree clean and you want most of the issue to be physically removed. I find most of the time just a couple of good applications of high pressure water, getting down in the branch angles, looking for all the areas where they're colonizing, making sure you're keeping the old foliage and the cobwebs and the deadwood out of the tree. That's the easiest way to control those issues. I very seldom have ever had to put on any kind of a control spray other than just high pressure water. This spring season is also a really good time to start taking into consideration some pruning. So we can do a little bit of light summer pruning now. We can also, along with thinning, we can open up the structures a little bit so that we have a lot of light exposure and we have a fair amount of air movement. That's going to help all that fruit to ripen up in a much better mature quality. So I can look for things right now. This little hedgerow section right here is starting to grow out into the road. So I can come in now and I can start to selectively make some cuts, in and around fruit sets. So I've got more light exposure here. I've got more air movement here. It's going to allow that fruit to ripen up a lot more uniformly. And I'm making cuts that are advantageous to the tree at the same time. So you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to be on a schedule. Size control pruning is something that you should work in at your convenience. If you do a tree this week and a tree next week and a tree in 2 weeks, that's fine. Don't feel like you're intimidated and have to go out and do the whole thing in one weekend. That's crazy. You've got all year. You've got all the time in the world to make your trees manageable and keep the systems healthy and make them work for your landscape situation. Now, I understand that all of these things I've talked about before, everything that we talked about in this video, I've talked about in other videos, but they're the same questions I get over and over and over. So I think now is timely, and I think it's important to reconsider all of these issues and all of these problems and all of these techniques so that you have time to come in and do it when it's manageable for you. Enjoy your orchard, eat fresh fruit every day. I'm Tom Spellman with Dave Wilson Nursery. More to come in the future.